G'day everyone, it's Scott Allen and thanks for joining us on the first episode of the Raw Rugby Show for 2014. On the panel with me today I've got Spiro Zavos and Biltongbek, both from the site who you would know well. Hi gentlemen, how are you?
Good, yep, fine.
Thanks, Scott.
So we want to keep this fairly fast moving, not tie you up for too long as you're listening to us. So let's start by talking about the round one matches that we had last week, both within the South African Conference. First up we had the Cheetahs playing the Lions, and I think to most people it was a surprise that the Lions got up. Very close match, 21-20, won basically in the last minute with a drop goal. 2 tries to 1 for the Cheetahs and a crucial missed penalty goal by Watts towards the end. And then for the Lions, Bossov kicking 6 out of 6 and obviously the winning drop goal. What did you think of the match?
Well, it was error-ridden from the start. Villarreal in particular made many mistakes in the beginning, handling errors, looking at the gap rather than the ball before he secured it. And although he was at the end the playmaker for both the tries, the Narkodrovsky after the match complained that the team didn't, what they call the old cliche of they didn't earn the right to go wide. Interestingly, the halfback pairing of the Lions, between the two of them, they made only 3 tackles during the whole match. So the Cheetahs were intent on going out, scoring 4 tries, and all they wanted to do was get the ball wide as soon as possible. So they never really attacked the middle of the field. And due to that, the defensive holes that were there in the middle of the pitch, they never utilized. They didn't control the match. They never controlled the match. The Lions kept in the game due to ill discipline. The Cheetahs gave away a lot of penalties, and with Bossov kicking so well, the guy can kick 60-meter kicks. And that way the Lions stayed in the match the whole time. And that kick from Elgar Watts right at the end there, that was right in front of the posts. Goosen went off because of an injury, but I see he's okay. He'll be back this weekend. And I'm sure if Goosen was there, then it would have been a different result.
And then we had the Sharks hosting the Bulls, and the Sharks took that one 31-16, and probably the scoreline was a bit closer than I thought the match actually was. The Sharks looked very good and were dominant, and the Bulls were very one-dimensional. How did you see it?
The Bulls have been playing that predictable game plan of theirs for a decade now, ever since Heineke Meyer coached them in the early 2000s. And again, what the Bulls does differently to what the Cheetahs do is they only attack the middle of the pitch. It's 1-2 passes into the forwards, and due to the way that they played, the Sharks left them gaps on the outside, but the Bulls never exploited that. On the other hand, the Sharks played a very balanced game. One thing I liked about them was their willingness to offload in the contact area. If you looked at the link between the forwards and the backs in close contact, the ball was they tried to keep the ball alive as much as possible. The Sharks looked excellent in attack. They were a good balance attacking the middle and attacking wide. And the Bulls are predictable. They kick and chase game. They don't execute it well. Francois Hougaard is not a kicking scrum half. So from that point of view, if the Bulls aren't going to change their game plan to suit Hougaard or get him to play his natural game, I just can't see him being successful.
Well, I'd come in here and say that, the Bulls are hopeless. They're playing the same game as they have for the last 10 years. That game worked at when they won their Super Rugby titles, when the laws of the game were interpreted in favour of the defending side. And so if you tackled a player and the ball wasn't released, you won the penalty, Now they've changed the interpretation of the law so that you've got to allow the player to release the ball. And so the Bulls' kicking game is now a waste of time. They just give the ball away to the opposition, and I don't see any future for the Bulls until they rethink their game, basically, and start playing modern rugby.
Yes, the Bulls have certainly lost a lot of players this year, but one player they've got back in their roster is Victor Matfield, who's come out of retirement after 2 years at age 36. He'll turn 37 during the tournament. Biltong, do you think that was something that Matfield wanted to get back into the game, or do you think it was the Bulls lost so much experience that they needed him back?
I firmly believe it was Heineke Meyer. I think this does not come from the Bulls, this comes from Heineke Meyer. And if you go back in history over the last 2 years, Heineke Meyer has a very strong relationship with Victor Matfield, the same as he has with Corey de Vries. And as early as 2012, Heineke Meyer was lamenting the stocks of the locks in South Africa. As you know, we've lost many older and senior players. So it's only the young ones like Peter Steve de Toy and Etzebeth and those guys. So he was the one, I believe, that's the catalyst for Victor Matfield coming back.
All right, well, this week we've got the Australian and New Zealand teams joining into the Super Comp, and I want to talk a little bit about the Australian team prospects. Spiro, the Brumbies went very close last year. Obviously, Jake White left, and we've got an inexperienced coach in Stephen Larkham as head coach, with Laurie Fisher as director of rugby. But I think that there's a lot of mentoring going on there. How do you see the Brumbies will go this year?
Well, talking about all the Australian sides, we can only go on the pre-tournament matches, and they're terrible examples, really, to tell us how teams are going to get on. The Crusaders, for instance, just about always lose their pre-tournament matches. My feeling is that, if you take away, Jake White is a great coach, and he's a winning coach, and he's out of it, and they've got basically the coaching staff that couldn't do very much with the Brumbies before. And so, I don't know, the Brumbies have got a good squad and so on, and they've got a sort of a game that Jake White has given them, but will they play that game? I don't think so. And so, I just don't think the Brumbies will be as good this year as they were last year.
Yeah. Look, I think the Brumbies, it's very hard to judge their form. They had one trial match against the Highlanders, but then their final two matches were against, ACT club sides or invitational teams. I'm not convinced that's the best lead into a tournament, but these guys know more than I do about what they're doing. I think the positive for the Brumbies is that they've got Pocock back, even though George Smith is not there, but I think he'll be a real bonus for them. What about the Force, Spiro? Michael Foley in again as the head coach for the second year. Lots of South African recruits.
The Force are an interesting side because they have they do have these South Africans. They've got Michael Foley, and so he'll play a very restrictive game. They've got, I think, Philip Fowler is doing a lot of the sort of intellectual work there with them, so they'll play smart, and teams which come out and play defensive rugby are sometimes hard to beat. Now, as I said, it's raining here in Sydney, so if they get on Sunday on a wet pitch, they get the Waratahs on a wet pitch. Who knows? But the Force. You can't see the Force winning too many games, although they've got, this terrific young player, Kyle Goodwin. I think he's fantastic. They'll be one of the weaker Australian sides, if not the weakest Australian side, but they'll knock one or two teams off, I guess.
Yeah, look, I certainly think Godwin's a very good player, but for me the key for the Force is how Zach Holmes goes at fly half and whether he can control the game, although that was a real weakness for them last year. Okay, so let's talk about the Rebels. They've won 3 of their 3 trial matches so far. Tony Magana's taken over and head coach, and from watching them play the Reds last weekend, I've been very impressed with their physicality in the tackle and the ruck. I do question as to how Bryce Hegarty will go at fly half. He's very inexperienced, and I think that's another key for them. Spiro, what do you think about the Rebels?
Yeah, well, Magana is a very good coach. And apparently he's concentrating on defence, and which is a smart thing to do because the Rebels leak points too often. They will beat sides. They've beaten the Crusaders. They've beaten basically all the strong sides one time or another, but they can't seem to put games together. They'll probably be. They'll probably give a few teams in the Australian Conference and in other conferences a bit of a shake. I think. I can't see them making the finals, but McGowan is a good coach, and we've seen with Dave Rennie that a good coach can come in and make a huge impact, basically with players who previous coach couldn't do anything with. So who knows? It's one of those. They have won all their trial matches, and it's the first time they've ever won trial matches. So that there must be something going on there. So I just watch them. We have to really see them now, outside of the trial match when it's for real.
Yeah, and speaking of new coaches, Richard Graham has taken over as head coach of the Reds this year, although he was closely involved last year. From the Reds' point of view, I think the most positive thing for them is that James Horwell, Will Genia and Quade Cooper are all fit to start the season for the first time in 3 years. They've been missing at least one of those each of the last 3 years. They've had some pretty mixed trial form. I thought they were good against the Chiefs. They were good in the first 20 to 25 minutes against the Rebels, but after that I thought they were pretty poor in that match. Spiro, how do you see the Reds going?
Well, look, I'll be honest with you. At this stage, I don't rate Richard Graham as a coach. I mean, he did nothing with the force, I think that coaching now is becoming very, very important. I've heard rumours, I don't know how true they are, that he doesn't get on with Quade Cooper. Now, if he doesn't get on with Quade Cooper, if that's true, the team is history, until Quade gets what he wants and so on. So I don't know. I might be just reacting against the sort of Wayne Smiths of this world or something like that, but I don't see the Reds doing that well this year. But we have to see them play a game to see what happens. Their forwards are small, aside from Horwell, and in a long campaign that can be very, very difficult, particularly when against South African sides.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's talk about your Waratahs. Michael Checker has come out publicly and said that he's targeting a first or second place finish. I know that you've been quite vocal on the Raw, saying that you think they'll win the Australian Conference. I backed them to win that in December when we did our last Raw Rugby show, and I wrote an article where I included that prediction in January. So I do agree with you there. I think Israel Folau is going to step up another level, and if he's not already a superstar of the game, become one this year. Bernard Foley stays at 10, which I think is a great move, which means that Kurtley Beale has to slot into a new position at 12. Didn't force Folau out or Foley. I know you think that they're going to top the conference, but give us a little more detail as to why.
Well, they've got 13 in the team which is starting on Sunday. They've got 13 Wallabies there, and they're good Wallabies too, And the guys who aren't Wallabies are Lofa, the winger, who was sensational against the Blues, and Will Skelton, who probably is the biggest guy. The second row is probably the biggest guy in the whole tournament, bigger than the South African Giants. So they've got size, they've got pace, they've got Israel Folau, who is probably the most dynamic player in the tournament. I like the fact that he kept Foley at number 10. I don't like Kurtley Beale at number 10. I think he tries to do far too much and gives the ball away with chip kicks and things like that. But at inside centre, when he played in the trial match against the Blues, his passing was fantastic. He was able to do the cutout passes, a bit like Quade Cooper. Bernard Foley is also a very good defensive player, and down at number 10 channel. I just like, and I think Checkers has got him fit. He's had them running up the Coogee steps until they've been dropping down with their tongues hanging out and so on. They look fit, they look big, they look quick, and now they've got to deliver. That's all there is to it, And Checker has got a history, of success. He took Leinster to their first Heineken Cup victory, brought the crowds back there and so on. So I'm very hopeful that the Waratahs will do well this year.
All right, Bilton, what do you make of the move to the Waratahs by Jacques Polkater?
He's a big, strong guy, but he's not the smartest player. He goes into contact without any thought or concern for his body. And I think these days, being big and strong alone is not enough. I think the Waratahs are going to be disappointed with him. I've been reading a lot of what they've been saying about him at the Waratahs, and I think they're setting themselves up for disappointment. They've been hyping him a lot. I've never really rated him, even with the Bulls. He went into the Springbok team. I think he played 2 or 3 games. He was immediately dropped. He's in a way similar to Stolberger, but a Stolberger-like. So, I don't know. I don't think it's going to work out there.
All right, well, we'll see how we go. No doubt there'll be plenty of differing opinions. Well, let's talk about the round 2 matches, and I want to get tips from both of you. And I've got on the screen the times for each of the matches. Now, I just point out that they're from the broadcaster's website, so check your local guides as to whether they're daylight saving time or local time. First up, Crusaders play the Chiefs. Spiro, how do you see that one going?
I'm taking the Crusaders at home.
Okay, Biltong, what do you think?
I'm going Chiefs. I think the Crusaders always start slow.
Okay, well, I'm going to go Crusaders, so that's 2 of us for them. Cheetahs v the Bulls. Biltong, what's going to happen here?
History is against the Cheetahs. They've never beaten the Bulls in the Super Rugby tournament. But I'm going to go for the Cheetahs, yeah.
Okay, and Spiro?
I am too.
Oh, well, that's 3 out of 3.
I'm basically voting against the Bulls unless they play at home. And unless they get a referee too who sort of likes their style of play.
All right, well, yeah, I think the Cheetahs as well. Highlanders against the Blues. What do you see happening, Spiro?
I'm taking the Blues. On paper, they've got a terrific team. I'm a bit doubtful though about whether John Kirwan is up to it as a coach, but he's got Graham Henry there behind him. So I think the Blues might be quite good this year.
Well, I think the Blues as well. What about you, Biltong? Any difference?
I agree. Blues, I agree.
Okay. And then we get back to what's probably the biggest local derby this week, Brumbies v Reds. Spiro,
I'm taking the Brumbies because they're playing at home, but I mean both sides, we don't know what both sides are like really. We're going to find out. But the Brumbies are playing at home. They're hard to beat at home. So I'm taking them because they're playing at home.
Yeah. Biltong, what do you see?
Exact same reason, home ground.
Okay, well, I'd like to sit on the fence and say it'll be a draw, but I think the Brumbies might just get there in a very close match. So I'll tip against the Reds. Sharks v Hurricanes. Biltong, the Sharks going to continue the roll on?
I'm sure they will. Talk in the week so far has been that they actually played poorly according to their standards. And they want to show a big improvement, so I think it's going to be a good game for them.
And Spiro, your tip?
Well, I'm taking the Sharks. They're playing at home. The Hurricanes are a frustrating side. Any side that takes them on the forward will tend to beat them. If the game opens up, then the Hurricanes can be absolutely lethal, but I just don't think they're a very smart team. They've got a lot of talent there, but I'm taking the Sharks.
Well, I agree with that. I think the Sharks are going to be a real threat in the tournament. So, Biltong, Lions v Stormers. Can the Lions pull off another giant killing exercise?
No. The Stormers won't play the same game as the Cheetahs. The Cheetahs open themselves up by not keeping to their structures. The Stormers will do that. The Stormers defense, it will be a conservative game. It will probably be the boring game of the weekend, but the Stormers will do it.
All right, I agree. And Spiro, what about you?
I'm taking the Stormers. I don't think Lightning's going to strike twice for the Lions against strong teams.
Okay, and Spiro, you would obviously be tipping the Force to beat the Waratahs?
Yeah. I'm the only Greek I know that has never made any money on gambling, but even I wouldn't take the Force on that one. No, I'm taking the Waratahs.
Yeah, same for me. And Biltong, what about you?
Yeah. No, there's no doubt about that.
And also we're in round 3 of the Six Nations this weekend. I won't go through every match, but I suppose the big match that has a significant bearing on the tournament is England hosting Ireland at Twickenham. Spiro, what do you think? Can Ireland continue that role from the game against Wales?
England are hard to beat at Twickenham. You know, they're trying to build a fortress there, but Ireland have been so good. You know, they almost beat the All Blacks. they've played very, very well 2 weeks ago, and I'm taking Ireland, and part of it is just hoping, that this England side can be beaten, and it might get them to play a bit more expansively, and the bully boy sort of game that they tend to play to open it up a bit more and so on. But I'm going for Ireland. I reckon this could be a great Irish side. They've got a terrific coach, Joe Smith, who they're talking about in New Zealand as the next All Black coach after Hansen, but we'll wait and see about that. But, I mean, Ireland are good.
Yeah. And Biltong, your view on this one?
I would like Ireland to win. I've kind of decided to support them this year, but I don't think they're going to do it. England this weekend are going to be too tough.
Okay. Well, look, I think Ireland can get there. I was so impressed with the way they played, and like you, Spiro, I'm a massive fan of Joe Schmidt as the coach. Gentlemen, thanks very much. We've covered a fair bit in a very short time, and I appreciate your time for both coming on. Nice to have you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very enjoyable.